Hey everyone. So I just wanted to hop on here really quickly and talk about the new Tiana's Bayou adventure ride. So, as some may know, the ride footage is out there now. There are different previews happening for Imagineers, and other people have been invited along, I guess. Either way, I've seen the ride through videos on YouTube, and there's other people's reactions on YouTube and feedback and opinions and things like that. So, yeah, just wanted to take the time and pop in my 2 cents. So, I did watch the ride through. I was also watching the movie on the same day, funny enough, the same day as I saw the ride through videos pop up. So, the timing was quite nice for me to kind of go from the movie and into seeing the ride. It was just kind of good in providing perspective and everything like that. So my I guess first off, my initial reaction to the change um, in going from Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So, um, yeah, like it's interesting because now that I've seen the ride through, my opinion is both the same and different. So I'll explain. So at first, my opinion was that I love Splash Mountain. I personally didn't really see too much of a problem with it. Um, and that's kind of that was my initial feel, just from a personal perspective. Of course, there's also the fact that there are emotional ties and nostalgic ties within me to Splash Mountain. So of course there's that very natural factor as well. um, but also, as many others have pointed out, or you may have thought about before if you're listening to this, that why couldn't there have been a compromise of, I suppose, one Splash Mountain being turned into Tiana's Bayou Adventure and the other one remaining the same. I think, to me at least, I can see good argument, I suppose, for either of the U.S. parks to have done one or the other. So I think, in California, for me personally, the argument could have been made of, like, I guess for me, I would have wanted to keep that one as the original Splash Mountain, just because it is the original Splash Mountain, if I'm not mistaken. And it just, I don't know, it really does. Even though I know that Splash Mountain is near New Orleans Square, or was near New Orleans Square in Disneyland, California, like, it's still, I don't know, there was just a certain Disneyland identity, I guess, created around um, just having that specific set of classic iconic attractions all together at the same time in the park. It's like, I think for me also, it's just the flow of it. Like, everything in a row was like, bang, Jungle Cruise, then Indiana Jones, Pirates, Haunted Mansion, um, Splash Mountain. Like, all of those things were just in a row, and you could just start your day off one after another that way. Of going, starting off at Adventureland, going into Critter Country. I do also think that Critter Country has a different feel. I don't think that New Orleans Square feel and vibe and atmosphere quite reaches to Critter Country and Splash Mountain. That's just my opinion. I feel like there's a completely different feel. But on the other hand, what I was going to say is, of course, the other side of the argument would be that, Splash Mountain is near New Orleans Square, so it would make sense to have the Tiana's Bayou Adventure ride there, at Disneyland Park. Um, but at the same time, I guess another argument for like, so sorry, let me backtrack. So the argument for keeping Tiana's Bayou Adventure, or sorry, let me backtrack once more. The argument for keeping Splash Mountain in Disneyland, California, and doing Tiana's Bayou Adventure only in Florida, I think the argument for that would be that Splash Mountain is iconic and original to Disneyland, and it created a very iconic and unique and specific identity to Disneyland. And to me, Disneyland is all about the classic attractions. So it made sense for it to be there to me. And it also fit in with Critter Country there. And to me, it doesn't really fit in with New Orleans Square. That's just my opinion. Furthermore, having Tiana's Bayou Adventure only in Florida, to me, that's kind of an opportunity because although I've not been on it myself yet, I do feel like Florida is kind of, in the U.S. parks, it's kind of like the location that gets all the new shiny toys. So to me, it would make sense to put the new ride there and just do maybe the Splash Mountain that some people think is better already in Florida. It would kind of make sense to kind of upgrade that, I suppose, like even more into this new, wonderful attraction which is Tiana's Bayou Adventure. It would have made sense, and this is all before seeing the ride through, but that was my thought process. Is it would have made sense to follow suit in Florida, getting all the big new attractions, with the best effects and stuff like that, and just keeping Disneyland as that iconic classic theme park that was Walt's original theme park. It has that smaller, charming feel, that just original Disneyland feel, I suppose. So that would have made sense to me. But again, on the flip side, because maybe Splash Mountain in Florida was better than the one in California, then maybe it could have made sense to keep Splash Mountain in Florida as Splash Mountain and then only do Tiana's Bayou Adventure in California, because of it being right next to New Orleans Square as well. So I think now that I've seen the ride through, my opinion is different in the sense that I don't think it would have made a lot of sense to keep, how can I say this? I think now that I've seen the new ride, the new Tiana's Bayou Adventure ride through, now that I've seen that, I think that my opinion changes in the sense that I actually think that I actually don't think there is a compromise that could have been made of making one park in the U.S. having Splash Mountain and then the other park in the U.S. having Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I honestly think it potentially could have or should have just been an all or nothing type of a thing, where they should have either done the Tiana's Bayou Adventure in both places, which I don't agree with. So my opinion's also changed on that. But I think they could have either done that and changed it just like they are, but, make Tiana's Bayou Adventure this really insanely epic ride that's even better than Splash Mountain. I think those are kind of the two options. It's just one of those things of like, Splash Mountain was and is just so loved and adored by so many, and it was such an incredible ride that replacing it's like you really have to make up for that iconicness, I guess, the that love for the classic Disney attraction that is Splash Mountain. You really want to be making up for that with just impressive everything else that can be presented with a new themed attraction or a new ride. So I really think that there was really big shoes to fill. Obviously, you can't automatically come in with a classic attraction on day one, or maybe you can, but to me, I don't think that was the expectation of like nobody's gonna have the same emotional attachment to Tiana's Bayou Adventure right off the bat as they did to Splash Mountain, especially if they have a history and they already love the ride and you build memories on the ride, and it was just such a good ride. So I don't mean to harp too much on about that, but I think there could have been and should have been that I don't want to say effort, but there should have been that aspect of really making up in other areas for the fact that they're losing an iconic attraction that's so loved and adored by so many, and that's just so classic and historic to the Disney parks. So my opinion is different in that I wouldn't have wanted or been able to. I don't think they could have or should have compromised with just like, oh, just one park do the one. I really think that's not the case. I think that they should have either done Tiana's Bayou Adventure and made sure it was bigger and better and more epic and more memorable than Splash Mountain, I suppose, plussing it if you want to call it that. I don't know. But I really think that they should have done that or something else, which I will save and hopefully not forget to say what this something else is. So as for the ride itself, seeing the ride through, yeah, I've seen the criticism as well. So just a little bit on that really quick. The criticism is like that the story is lackluster. The the main song on the ride is, same thing, lackluster. It's lacking excitement. It's lacking thrill. So those are a couple of things that I saw online of criticisms toward it. But I have a completely different take on it. I have a totally unique spin, and it's genuine to what I think. So I'll share that. So for me, it's not necessarily that, which I'm actually, so I would say one of the key factors that people are maybe upset about or going to be upset about is that there's no really villain in the ride. So spoiler alert, but there's really no villain in the ride. So that's going to be a hot take, as well as I'm sure many other things in this episode. But I'm just going to say the whole episode is going to be a hot take is my expectation. But I'm actually glad that's not there. I don't think that is needed in order to be part of the thrill factor or excitement factor or the not being lackluster factor. But I was surprised. I was shocked. I can see how obviously that would be something that adds to the thrill and I suppose excitement or whatever of the ride. But I was completely shocked that they didn't have that in there in the ride. So personally, again, everything I say is probably going to be a hot take on this episode, but I am glad that it's not in there for my own reasons, but I am shocked. I'm absolutely shocked, and I can see how similar to the original Splash Mountain ride, it would have been quite the opportunity for an intense thrill to have like a really dark, scary, creepy scene in the lift hill climb up before that main big drop and plunge. So that's what I honestly truly expected, and I almost wonder if they're going to add that. I think Disney is going in the direction of villains and really cashing in on people's love of, and I say people's love of this, but I don't think it's really ever as much people as they think. I think it's really more so a niche, to be completely honest, like to be transparent. Um, I really do think it's a niche that Disney is capitalizing on, but I think they are capitalizing on that niche of people's love of dark things. So they want to do the Villains Land. They're doing all this epic stuff for Halloween and stuff. I actually even got a shout out on my commentary, or I guess comment on this, on one of the Provost Park Pass videos last year for one of the videos, and they were discussing like the difference between how Halloween used to be in Disneyland and how it is now. So that was really cool to have Chris from Provost Park Pass, because I'm a big fan of that channel. I love watching it, watch it almost every day. But yeah, it was really cool to have him read some of my comments, or my comment. But anyway, all that to say, Disney is really capitalizing on the Halloween stuff and the dark stuff, the spooky stuff, the villain stuff, all that stuff. There's the talks of the Villains Land, so maybe that's part of the game plan. Though maybe they're keeping Splash Mountain as sort of just the family friendly type of vibe, and they're saving all that stuff for Villains Land. I just don't agree with that. That's just my take on it. Again, I don't expect anyone else to agree, but my take is just that I enjoy the way the original Walt Disney, I guess, like came up with things. Like I enjoy the family friendly rides that are just happy, and the ones that are, a little bit scary and kind of happy as well, like Splash Mountain, like Haunted Mansion, and like Pirates of the Caribbean. To me, that really, really does make something beautifully unique that Walt Disney himself really helped create. Even after he had passed on, I think his legacy carried that on into the Imagineers creating the Haunted Mansion. So I think that it would have been great to kind of stick to that. I don't want to call it a formula, but to stick to that approach, because it worked, and because it's Disney's iconic thing. And I think that's great. Even with Splash Mountain, I think it was great. It was. I mean, even just the contrast of going from the silly Brer Rabbit themed ride to, I mean, I know it wasn't like that scary, but the contrast of going from that to the original like lift hill climb with like the vultures and everything, like especially as a kid, like that's pretty scary. Even as an adult, to me though, that's pretty scary. It's a really nice contrast of like when it shifts from the happy, silly vibe into the really serious kind of dark tone. Like obviously there's a balance. You don't want to go too dark or whatever, but like that was really, really cool to have that. And then again, to go from that into the plunge into just the happy music again and everything, that just created a really nice contrast, and I'm really, really, really surprised that they didn't stick to that, and I actually do kind of see how it created a lackluster sort of feel on the ride, as far as like lacking excitement and thrill, and even just contrast of emotion. It was very linear. The whole ride was very linear, and I think I saw one thing online that was kind of criticizing, I suppose, the storyline of the ride. And I think for me, you can really create whatever storyline. I don't think that's the main issue. For me, the main issue is how is it executed? How is the ride, how is the story executed? What are kind of like the, not even small details, but just the details of contrasting between different scenes of the ride. Um, so I'm not going to go too into depth of like the ride, the scene changes in the ride, and this scene is about this, and then the next scene is this, and then the next one is this. That's not really my thing, but I do see how those things do make a big difference. So, just to kind of chat a little bit about what I got from just watching the ride through, like my first impression of watching the ride through. From what I got from it, without any reading any other explanation of what the story is supposed to be about, and granted, this is watching the video while I'm cleaning up, while I'm doing dishes, while I have a baby at home and all this stuff. So it's not like I was super focused and analyzing every detail like crazy or anything. But first impressions of the ride, like I said before with the lift hill, like honestly, right off the bat, my expectations were like just incorrect. Like what I expected the ride to be like was completely different, I suppose. So I'll say what the ride was and what I expected it to be and what I wished it could have been, I guess, after, or what I think it could potentially have, like how it could potentially be better. So, you start off on the ride and then you see these like signboards or whatever, I don't even know what to call them, but you see theming, I suppose, basically, of food and Tiana's kitchen, and that's sort of the thing. And then I think there's like some banners saying like "Welcome to the party. I'm glad you made it," that sort of a thing. So the beginning of the story right off the bat is, I suppose, happy, if you want to call it that, or it's lighthearted, it's fun, it's welcoming, and that was unexpected. But yeah, so you kind of just go through the ride. I noticed, all the different characters. You notice Lewis, the crocodile, pretty soon on. I think Tiana is actually the first animatronic there. The animatronics are really pretty much insane. I would say that's one of the strongest factors of the ride, is that the Tiana animatronic is amazing. The Lewis animatronic that they have on there is amazing. There are multiple, but I'll save that for later. But yeah, that's what you kind of notice. And then you kind of just go through the ride. I didn't pay too much attention, again, to any of the details. The main next thing I wanted to see was what was the drop like, the going into that main big drop, so the lift hill, because really that's that in the other ride, in the other Splash Mountain, and in the original Splash Mountain, that's kind of the turning point. That's basically the focal point of the ride. That was what was, that for me when I went on that ride, that was kind of, that was in the back of my mind the whole time, of like, oh shoot, in the back of your mind, the drop's coming up, and not just the drop, but the scary part that's, leading up to the drop when you're climbing up the lift hill, and there's that contrast, and they just did such an incredible job on that with Splash Mountain. But anyway, so to me, that was kind of the basic overview of first impression. Starts off themed as Tiana's food, cooking, and welcoming the guests, welcoming us into the party. And then you go through the ride looking at the characters, seeing the characters, and seeing, obviously just the different scenes throughout the ride. And then once you get to the lift hill, it is Mama Odie, I believe she's called. But either way, she's up there. She's there, so she's the introduction into the lift hill. And first impression, I wasn't sure if she was just going to be the introduction into the lift hill, or actually, sorry, my expectation was that she was, when I first saw her as the introduction into the big main lift hill, I figured she was just going to be the introduction, and the lift hill itself was going to have a whole other thing. That was not the case. She is also in the middle of the lift hill, spoiler alert. And yeah, I suppose the lackluster comments are sort of on par. So that was sort of pretty much it for my first impression from up to that point. And then you just like go down the lift hill. I think she says something like there's no turning back, or there's, it's not even something, I don't think it's something that exciting. Did terrible with, I did know the research on this for like, you know, writing things down or anything, but she makes one comment at the end, like just as she's already behind you and you're about to drop. I don't remember what she said, but yeah, that's the extent of it. And then you drop down, and then I don't really remember the end, but I believe it's just like the happy party celebration. So that's kind of my first impression. My critiques on the ride, I don't want to say critiques, but what I expected and what I thought was going to be better. Oh, and what I read online from what the storyline is supposed to be for the ride is that something about like there's the Tiana's party or something that she's throwing, and they need a special ingredient or something, and we're looking for it throughout the ride or something, and it turns out we're the special ingredient, and something along those lines, something like that. I have no idea, but I didn't get that. I definitely did not get that. And then also I've read online also somewhere that or saw on YouTube or something that there's an aspect of the ride where you're supposed to be shrunken down, sort of like, you know, the way Princess Tiana and the prince were shrunken down into frogs. You're supposed to go from frogs into big. So it turns out the lift hill into the before the big drop, that's when you're turning big. Again or something, I don't know. Either way, that's kind of that. And then now back to my expectations and thoughts and opinions and 2 cents. So what I think is, again, it's all about the execution. They could have kept that storyline, that's fine. They could have kept those even just basic ideas of like, you know, you get shrunken down to frog size and then you turn big again into a human on the lift hill or whatever. Potentially, like, that could have even worked, keeping that as where you're turning back into human size on the lift hill. All that, I think, potentially has potential. It's all about the execution to me. So my expectation was that the ride was not necessarily going to start as a happy-go-lucky welcoming. My expectation was that it would start off like just neutral, sort of, I guess. Like, you're just, you know, catching Tiana on a regular day, or maybe on the lead up to a special day or whatever, just, you know, like it's supposed to be, but that, you know, everything is fine. There's no welcome, there's no banners, there's no "I'm glad you made it" or anything like that. And then, just like any story, I would have expected there to be some sort of a downturn, I suppose, or some sort of a twist or something. And then I would have expected that at the very end, of course, just like the normal Splash Mountain, the old Splash Mountain, I should say. See, it's just so confusing because it's supposed to be a new ride, but it's not. I would have expected that to obviously still be the celebration, like, yes, hooray, you know, we made it, kind of a thing. So, of course, I think we all knew and expected that, for those of us who were actually thinking about it. So I would have expected that. At the very least, even while watching the ride, even after seeing the welcome banners at the beginning of the ride and the I'm glad you made it or whatever, all that sort of vibe, the way the ride started, I still would have expected more of a clear, like, I suppose, plot twist. I don't know if that's the right word, but some sort of tension, some sort of, you know, bump in the road or curveball being thrown at you or something happening, um, where yeah, there's some sort of problem or whatever. And I didn't expect that to be towards the beginning of the ride, but I think it could have been. I think there was definitely, you know, on the original Splash Mountain, and it sucks to compare it back and forth, but that's just what we have to do, because realistically and logistically, the track is the same, the layout's the same, and the ride is kind of just, it really is sort of just rethemed. Like, I know that they did do changes to the outside, and it's not Chickapin Hill anymore. But yeah, it's there's just so much similarity. You just can't not compare the new with the old. So anyway, yeah, would have expected some sort of you know, bump in the road or twist or curveball or something to be thrown at us, to be thrown at you in the story, or at Tiana or whatever. And then I would have expected definitely some sort of, like, not just tension, but some sort of suspense and intensity, specifically on the lift hill climb thing up leading up to the big drop. I think that would have been also just really cool. It's not that I expected it just because I expected it. It's also because it would have been really cool, I think. And again, that's some of the criticism that I read, that it's just lacking in excitement and thrill. So that's definitely what I would have expected. And like, again, on the other hand, it's like I'm actually kind of happy that there was not really the villain in it. I don't really like that imagery and that sort of aspect of the movie at all. So I am happy about that. I am gonna feel a little bit better about taking, you know, my you know, about taking kids on that ride, you know, if and when that does happen. So yeah, so I'm not totally bummed out that it's, like, you know, not super spooky scary on that part of the ride before the drop, but I would have expected that. I would have expected some sort of tension and just a little bit more clear of a story line. Like, I think even with Splash Mountain, and I'm not going to stop comparing the two because it just is what it is. We just have to. With Splash Mountain, at least there was that known tension. Even if you've never seen whatever movie Splash Mountain came from, which I'd never even have seen the movie, to be honest. But it's pretty obvious the story is about Brer Rabbit, and, you know, there's some tension with what's happening with Brer Rabbit, and it all comes to a head right before the big drop, and you are in that story, and you feel that you are in it, you feel that you're involved in it by that time, and you're also invested in it, and then bam, the big drop happens. There's kind of this crazy just bang of, you know, adrenaline and releasing of tension, and then it's all celebratory after that, and there's this, you know, feeling of just wide openness after that, and that's kind of how it went with this ride. And I'll probably wrap this up really quickly in the next 10 minutes here, but in this ride, there isn't that. So that's kind of, I guess, the completion of my expectations and observations of the ride. As for my critiques now, so here's moving from what I expected would be good, and kind of basically still do think would be good. Kind of moving from that into what I actually, I guess my thoughts and opinions on it at the moment. Um, so what I think is, I do think that what I would have liked. Now this is just me. I'm not saying this is objectively better. To me, it would have been really cool to start off the ride just as, how can I say this? A very straightforward, yet still very dense and immersive, but just a straightforward Tiana's Bayou adventure theme. Without the party, without the welcome, without the banners. I'm really just going to go in now. I'm going to go in hard with my opinion. So, I also thought the banners were just so tacky. I feel so bad for just kind of trashing this ride, but, and I don't mean to, and honestly, if and when I do get on the ride, which I will at some point, I'm just gonna really enjoy it. I know that I'm gonna enjoy it, so let me just say that really quick. But also, the banners I just thought were pretty tacky. It just seemed so, to me, it came off very low effort. The story was confusing. It's like, you're welcome to the party, but then there's all these pictures on the wall of like food, which that goes hand in hand, right? Food and party, but you're trying to figure out like, what's the story here? What's the theme? Anyway, all that to say, I think it just should have been you're just entering into the Bayou. It just should have been, just to me, an immersive experience, an immersively themed experience of just densely themed Tiana's Bayou adventure theming for the first part of the ride. Maybe let's say up to like that first drop or whatever. That's really what it should have been. And even just like soft vibes, like I suppose even I'm thinking that, it could be similar to like the Pirates of the Caribbean, where there's really no pirate until you hit that first skull and crossbones. But from when you get onto the boat until you hit that point, there's kind of that soft introduction. It's sort of like a soft opening introduction, that you're going from the real world, I suppose, into, this other dimension where there's pirates, this other time, this other place of time and space, right? So I feel like that could have been done in this ride. Like, take guests from being at Disneyland and take them from Disneyland into this other magical place of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Like, just theme it with, whatever the outdoor or natural or nature effects, or not effects, but whatever, themes and setting. Like, really just create a setting. Like, I guess, I don't know, maybe that's basic storytelling, but create a setting before you jump into the story. So I think that would have been really appreciated to me, if you ask me, to really just create the setting first, and then, begin the story, and then, introduce a problem. So, it's just a normal day, but it's a normal day in Tiana's Bayou, where there's going to be a party, and there's going to be food that she has, and she has to host and all this stuff. So kind of a normal day, but not a normal day. And it turns into an adventure because, oh no, something goes wrong. We're missing something, or whatever. Something is taken from us. Something is lost, or what have you. I think it would have been cool. Maybe then, and I'm just thinking about this now, maybe then you go through a ride and there's a mix of everything. There's a mix of silly, there's a mix of fun, there's a mix of, well, this is still just another normal day in the Bayou. And then there's a mix of a little bit of tension of like, well, shoot, there's still this thing that needs to be done. Like we're missing something, or this thing is after us, or whatever. And then I really would have expected it all to come to a head, and maybe I'm just mimicking exactly the like way Splash Mountain was, or the other Disney attractions, but still, again, just my opinion. So I think it could have and should have all come to a head. What my idea would be for this ride is have it all come to a head of some sort on the lift hill, where things kind of go from bad to worse, and you're going up the lift hill, and this is like the maximum point of uncertainty, like what's going to happen, this may not be it, the missing ingredient may be lost forever, that sort of a thing. And then bang, bang, you go down the drop, and that's that. What's done is done. The chips are falling the way that they're falling, right? And then, you know, now you're at towards the, ending part of the attraction, the resolution part of the attraction. It's a long ride, so it's really not the end, but you know, you're over you're completed with the bulk of the ride, I suppose. And this would be where it's like, yeah, everything worked out okay. Wow, that was a close one, and there's a celebration. Everybody go nuts, go wild, whatever. That's how I would have expected the ride. My further critique of the ride, which I do need to wrap this up now in the next 3.5 minutes. My critiques of the ride, furthermore, besides just the banners itself, I guess just like on a practical or like visual or like prop or like effects type of a subject, my critique is, besides like the banners and the confusing, like, I don't know, I don't want to say confusing, but besides the banners, which to me just seemed kind of like really, like, to me they honestly seemed tacky and low effort for some reason. I don't know why. I just can't not feel like that. Maybe I'll feel different in the future, but that's how I feel. The same thing with having the pictures on the wall of like the food. Obviously it's Disney, it looks amazing, like the actual art itself looks amazing, but as far as the, I don't know, just the creativity, the theming, tying it in all to the story and the experience, I just didn't feel like that was great. Another critique that I have is, I don't remember at the very end of the ride, but definitely one of my biggest critiques is that Tiana is in like, and this may be a random one, Tiana is in like the same outfit the entire ride. I don't know why that bothered me. I feel like there would have been less of a, everybody's, not everybody, but there's people complaining about the lackluster feel, and my description of it is that it just feels very linear. So like, it really would have changed it up and brought some variety and, I guess, spice to the ride. It would have spiced it up to have Tiana in different different outfits or whatever. Again, I don't remember the end, but I just remember seeing her at least, I want to say 3 times in that same outfit that she had on. And I just thought that was kind of weird. I mean, I don't think necessarily that every ride needs to be, I guess they call it like a book report ride, where the ride is just a story of the movie. I don't think I don't even mind that. Like, I don't mind, I'm not against that sort of thing. But, I think if it's done well, I think it can be even cooler to go off the beaten path of what the movie or IP is, as far as the story, and make a unique experience and story. So I don't think that was the issue, but anyway, all that to say, what would have made it, what comes to mind though is that if they would have done just a story book report ride, this aspect could have been cool, where you could have seen her in different outfits, and that would have brought more variety to the ride. Um, Another thing, which I also have this pet peeve in Pirates of the Caribbean, is that they show the main character, which in Pirates is Jack Sparrow, if you want to call him the main character or whatever. But in this, it's Tiana, obviously. I feel like they showed her so many times. Like, now that's just me, but I feel like you should just really be intentional, and it just creates no contrasts. It creates no, like, I don't know, story or flow. It creates less of a flory. Really getting my words twisted up here. It creates less of a story and less of an anticipation to see Tiana, or when you do see her, then you don't see her again for a while. I felt that way specifically with Lewis and Tiana. I get that they're the most iconic, favored characters in The Princess and the Frog. I feel the same way about those two characters. They're incredible, but I think it would have been really epic to just save it. Like, I don't know. That's just me, but like I know you can go too far with that, you know. Like, I definitely feel like the Matterhorn is like too far the other way, where it's like you rarely see the Yeti and you just see him for a quick second. So you can go the other way with that, but that was my other critique. Um, and then lastly, well, not lastly, but I think, yeah, again, the execution. So I didn't notice until someone pointed it out that you're supposed to be frog sized and then go into like bigger people size. So I don't know. The execution wasn't well. I just watching the video of the ride through. Maybe it's different if I read the ride, but I couldn't. I didn't know that. I didn't know you were supposed to be shrunk into a frog and then you're transforming into back into human size or whatever. That could have been done better. I feel like potentially. Definitely theming wise, I think it could have been potentially better. I can't help but wonder if the whole thing of being shrunk into a frog, there's less detail you have to do, because when you create a blade of grass that is, or a flower or something that's giant because you're a little frog, it's much easier to build the props for that, I feel like. So I really hope that they didn't just kind of cut corners with that or whatever. Although it is part of the actual story of the movie, so I don't know. But one of my biggest things is I think everybody was really afraid that there was going to be not good animatronics, and on top of that, like a lot of screens. Like, everybody has been hating on like the way Disney uses just screens and projections in rides, and I think we all knew that there was gonna be that in this ride. I really don't think there should have been. I think Disney tried to create this happy medium where they put two screens in the ride. Those are the only ones that I remember, as two of them. One of them is with Tiana, and then one of them is before the lift hill with Mama Odie. I don't think either of them were necessary. The one with Tiana on the video looked really, really, really bad quality to me. Completely unnecessary. To me, it completely takes you out of the immersiveness and realism of the ride. You know, whatever, however level of realistic it feels, obviously it's still just a ride, but to me it really takes you out of it when you see that, when I saw that screen. Likewise with Mama Odie before the lift, I think that one, I don't know. I'm open to the fact that that one could be more useful. But yeah, to me, those just really kind of, to me, those were the worst parts, worst aspects of the change of the ride, potentially, as far as like the effects and theming, is that they had in those screens, and I don't think they worked well. I don't think the execution was well. I don't think they did much to the story that I can tell from watching the ride through, and I don't think the quality on one of them was good. I think it looked kind of bad to me. For some reason, the quality on the second screen, or the one before the lift hill, looked really, really good quality, but I still didn't feel like it fit. I didn't feel like it was necessary. I feel like it really had a negative effect on the immersion and experience of the ride, but that's just me. And I think that's the gist of it. I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. I'm a little bit going to be going over time if I keep going. Maybe I'll do a part two, maybe not. Anywho, those are my 2 cents. Those are my expectations. those are my first impressions of the ride. I'm excited for the ride. And oh, yeah, the one thing I'm excited to ride the ride, I should say, because I'm always excited to ride every Disney ride, right? Of course. So the one thing I did want to say is how my opinion changed differently now than it was before is that I, instead of thinking there could have been a compromise with keeping one park in the US, Splash Mountain, and then the other one as Tiana's, I actually have changed my opinion and think that Tiana 100,000 billion percent, gazillion percent, she infinity percent deserves a ride and deserves her own ride and deserves for that ride to do the story and the movie and the IP justice. I do not think they should have transformed Splash Mountain. I think they should have kept Splash Mountain, and I think they should have given Tiana her very own ride, even if it was a log flume ride or whatever you want to call it, like a log ride. It could have been way better. I think it would have just done her more justice, and yeah, maybe it would have been okay to compromise and do just one ride as the Tiana ride, and the other Splash Mountain kept as Splash Mountain. But even if they did that, I think they really should have and could have went all out on the Tiana ride. I just really feel like I don't know what happened there, but I guess I am kind of on board with like the lackluster vibe. It is still a Disney ride. It is still, incredible as such. I'm still gonna ride the ride and probably be have tons of fun and be impressed. But for now, that's kind of the thought process. I like the theme of Tiana's Bayou Adventure in general, though. So yeah, I'm excited for that aspect. Anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. And if you have listened to this episode or any, thanks. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be seeing you next time. So thanks again for listening. And until next time, take care.